The Indo-Pacific is where the next war will either start or be prevented. Every major power knows it. Every major power is preparing for it. And at the bottom of that map, one country has been doing something most people haven't noticed. Rearming faster than at any point since the Second World War. Today's question is simple and a little impolite. Just how insanely powerful is Australia's military in 2026? The casual answer is that Australia is a rich, peaceful country that spends its military budget on peacekeeping and surf patrols. The accurate answer is something considerably more interesting. Because over the last 4 years, Australia has executed one of the most focused, deliberate military transformations of any mid-tier power on the planet. Nuclear submarines, long-range cruise missiles, homegrown autonomous combat aircraft, a missile factory being built in the desert. Most of the world hasn't noticed. That, as it turns out, is somewhat by design. Today, we fix that. To understand Australian military power, you need to understand the moment. For most of the post-Cold War era, Australia operated in what defense planners politely called a benign strategic environment. The neighborhood was stable enough that spending around 1.6% of GDP on defense felt reasonable. Deployments were in East Timor, Afghanistan, the Solomon Islands. The threats were real, but not existential. Then the 2020s happened. A more assertive China, building the largest navy in the world by hull count. A Pacific increasingly thick with gray zone activity, fishing fleets that aren't quite fishing, cable ships that aren't quite cabling. Russia's war in Ukraine, rewiring every democratic government's instincts about deterrence, and a series of classified briefings in Canberra that led in 2024 to the National Defense Strategy, a document that said, with unusual bluntness, that Australia now faces the most challenging strategic environment since the Second World War. That is not bureaucratic flair. That is a government telling its military, the old playbook is retired. Build something harder. The result is what we are examining today, a military in the middle of transformation, partly arrived, partly arriving, and already more capable than most threat assessments give it credit for. Geography is the foundation. The Lombok and Sunda Straits, the critical choke points connecting the Indian and Pacific Oceans, sit within Australia's extended strategic neighborhood. The sea lanes supplying Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan all flow through waters Australia can influence. The trade routes carrying a large portion of global commerce pass near its coast. Australia doesn't need to project power to the Persian Gulf to matter. It just needs to matter right here. And in 2026, it does. Start at sea, because for Australia, sea power is not a preference. It is existential geography. The fleet's cutting edge is 3 Hobart-class destroyers, Aegis-equipped warships built around one of the most battle-proven air and missile defense systems ever developed. A Hobart-class destroyer can simultaneously track hundreds of objects, discriminate between a commercial airliner and an incoming anti-ship missile at extreme range, and engage multiple targets at once. Think of it as a floating air traffic control center, except instead of directing planes, it is swatting them out of the sky. Not because it is angry, but because that is simply Tuesday. These ships are now being armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. Let that register. An Australian surface combatant carrying a weapon with a range beyond 1,600 kilometers and a precision measured in meters. A Hobart-class destroyer is no longer something that defends a coastline. It is something that reaches across the horizon and makes its point firmly and personally. The long-range anti-ship missile, the LRASM, is also entering service on Australian platforms. It flies low, it thinks, it uses onboard intelligence to identify and engage the right target without a continuous data link. It is, in the most literal sense, a missile that hunts. Behind the destroyers, the Hunter-class frigates are being built right now at Osborne Naval Shipyard in South Australia. Based on the BAE Systems Type 26 design, they are anti-submarine warfare specialists, long-range sonar, heavyweight torpedoes, and the kind of persistent underwater prosecution that makes a submarine commander feel quietly, personally targeted. The first HIMARS Hunter is taking shape. When she commissions in the early 2030s, the fleet's anti-submarine capability takes a serious step forward. The Arafura-class offshore patrol vessels are completing the picture. 12 ships patrolling the vast maritime approaches of the North and Northwest. Not glamorous, not headline-grabbing, but present, watching the fleet's persistent, patient eyes. Amphibious punch comes from HMAS Canberra and HMAS Adelaide, 2 landing helicopter docks the size of light carriers. Load them with infantry, helicopters, vehicles, and medical teams, and Australia can deliver combat or humanitarian capability onto any coastline within several thousand kilometers, with or without a working port. In an archipelago-heavy region where the next crisis could be a missile exchange or a Category 5 cyclone, that flexibility is not optional. It is strategic currency. Now go below the surface. The 6 Collins-class submarines have been quietly underestimated for years. After their Life of Type extension program, they carry new sonars, upgraded combat systems, and improved batteries. They are long-range, deep diving, and patient in ways that surface ships simply cannot be. In the 2030s, they will still be relevant threats, but they are the bridge, not the destination. The destination is AUKUS. Under the optimal pathway agreed with the United States and United Kingdom, Australia is acquiring nuclear-powered attack submarines, not nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered. The difference, for those who haven't spent time thinking about submarine warfare, is profound. A diesel-electric submarine must come shallow every few days to recharge. A nuclear submarine does not. It operates at combat speed, at depth, for months, anywhere, silently. The Submarine Rotational Force West is already operational at HMAS Sterling near Perth. U.S. Virginia-class submarines are rotating through, building the infrastructure, the maintenance culture, and the nuclear seamanship Australia will need when its own boats arrive. The SSN AUKUS, designed jointly by all 3 nations, is the long game. And when Australian crews finally take those boats to sea, the strategic map of the Indo-Pacific will have quietly, permanently shifted. Ghost Shark rounds out the underwater picture, an extra-large autonomous underwater vehicle capable of operating at range, mapping, listening, and eventually striking without a human aboard. It never gets tired. It never needs a mess deck, and it is genuinely worrying to anyone trying to keep a secret in Australian waters. The RAAF has quietly become one of the 5 or 6 sharpest small air forces on Earth. 72 F-35A Lightnings form its 5th generation core. The F-35 does not just fight, it perceives. Its sensor fusion integrates radar, passive detection, electronic intelligence, and data from allied networks into a single, unified picture that 4th generation fighters cannot access and cannot counter. An F-35 pilot often knows exactly where the threat is before the threat knows they are being watched. In air combat, information asymmetry is everything. The F-35 is a machine built to own it. Alongside the F-35's F/A-18F, Super Hornets carry the heavy strike load, bombs, anti-ship missiles, and the sheer flexibility of a large, mature platform that the Air Force knows well. Add 12 EA-18G Growlers, the electronic warfare variant, and the picture sharpens dramatically. The Growler does not need to fire a weapon to destroy capability. It floods your radar with noise. It intercepts and overwhelms your communications. It strips the electronic nervous system from your missiles and lets them wander off course into the sea. 12 aircraft doing that to your integrated air defense system is not a nuisance. It is a disaster. The E-7A Wedgetail holds the entire network together. 6 of these airborne early warning aircraft orbit above the battle space, seeing everything, discriminating threats, and directing fighters, destroyers, and missile systems into a single, fused team. Without the Wedgetail, you have platforms. With it, you have a system. That is the difference between a toolbox and a surgeon. 14 P-8A Poseidon's hunt submarines across millions of square kilometers of ocean, and 7 MQ-4C Triton drones provide persistent, high-altitude surveillance day and night without ever needing a coffee break. KC-30A tankers keep everything in the air far longer than any adversary would want. And then there is the Ghost Bat. The MQ-28 Ghost Bat is Australia's homegrown autonomous combat aircraft. Built by Boeing in Queensland, designed to fly alongside crewed jets as a loyal wingman, scouting ahead, carrying sensors, absorbing threats, or delivering weapons. It is not finished. It is not yet in squadron service. But its significance is not tactical. It is philosophical. Australia is learning right now how to generate mass in the air without proportionally adding human pilots to the casualty list. That is a revolution being assembled in a hangar, and it matters more than its current profile suggests. The Army has been reinventing itself. And the reinvention is not subtle. For 20 years, Australian soldiers were world-class at counterinsurgency, patient, culturally astute, disciplined under pressure. Afghanistan produced some of the finest small unit fighters on Earth. But the strategic environment changed, and the Army changed with it. The new doctrine is reach and dispersion. Hit things at distance, do it from coastlines and islands, and never be exactly where the enemy expects you to be. HIMARS has arrived. The High Mobility Artillery Rocket System can place a guided rocket onto a target 70 kilometers away with an accuracy measured in meters. It shoots and moves in minutes. It hides under canopies and behind terrain. Targeting it is genuinely difficult. Retaliating against it is a race the Army intends to win by simply not being there anymore when you fire back. In development, extended range munitions push that already impressive range significantly further. The Boxer Combat Reconnaissance Vehicle gives cavalry regiments better sensors and survivability. The AS-21 Redback Infantry Fighting Vehicle is entering service, finally giving infantry soldiers a modern, protected, well-armed platform. The soldiers who have spent careers riding in vehicles designed in the Cold War will have opinions about that, strong ones. Ground-based air defense is filling out with radars and interceptors aimed specifically at drones, cruise missiles, and low-altitude threats, the weapons of choice for any adversary who cannot afford to fight Australia in the air on equal terms. But the most significant change is geographic. The Army is moving north, units training on landing craft, dispersing along mangrove coastlines, firing precision weapons from concealed positions in jungle. The philosophy is simple and deeply uncomfortable for an adversary. There is no concentrated target, just dispersed, lethal teams with long reach, difficult to find and expensive to ignore. Do not walk into an archipelago thinking you will find a neat front line. You will not. You will find a question you cannot answer, firing at you from a place you cannot see. Modern military power lives as much in the invisible as the visible. Australia's Red Spice program has poured billions into cyber capability, offensive teams hunting adversary malware before it reaches critical networks, defensive teams hardening the digital infrastructure that a networked military depends upon, and the quiet, deniable capacity to reach back into adversary systems when directed. In a conflict that begins long before the first missile flies, cyber is the opening act. Australia intends to play it well. Space is the backbone. Without satellites, GPS fails. Without GPS, guided weapons miss, ships lose position, and communications fragment. Australia's Joint Space Command operates a constellation of assets, sharing data across the AUKUS and Five Eyes networks, and tracking what is happening in Earth orbit. Because the most dangerous satellite you will ever face is one that looks passive right up until it is not. The autonomous systems revolution is threading itself through every domain. Ghost shark underwater, ghost bat in the air, autonomous mine hunters, uncrewed surface craft. Together, they represent a force that never sleeps, never needs a salary, and never calls in sick during an exercise. The humans aim the system. The machines do the unglamorous, tireless, dangerous work of being everywhere at once. Power in the Indo-Pacific is not a solo performance, and Australia's choir is getting larger. AUKUS is the headline, but it goes far deeper than submarines. Quantum technologies, artificial intelligence, advanced cyber, hypersonic weapons. These are active programs with engineers, budgets, and timelines. This is not a memorandum of understanding. It is an integrated defense industrial relationship that did not exist 10 years ago and is accelerating. The Reciprocal Access Agreement with Japan allows Australian and Japanese forces to train on each other's soil. Japan is rearming faster than at any point since 1945. The combination of Australian maritime range and Japanese precision industry creates a southern and eastern constraint that any adversary must calculate simultaneously. U.S. Marines rotate through Darwin annually, not a symbolic gesture, a real exercised force with real equipment, training in real terrain with Australian counterparts. When something happens in the north, those commanders already know each other's names, each other's doctrines, and each other's habits. That familiarity is not soft power. It is hard readiness at the moment it is most needed. Add the Quad, Australia, India, the United States, Japan, bringing maritime surveillance coordination and strategic alignment across the broadest possible canvas. Add the 5-power defense arrangements with the UK, Malaysia, Singapore, and New Zealand. Add deepening partnerships with the Philippines and Pacific Island nations. Australia prefers company, and good company multiplies strength in ways no single capability program can match. Capability. Without domestic industrial resilience, is fragility dressed up as power. Australia's guided weapons and explosive ordnance enterprise is building capacity to manufacture missiles at home, not assemble components shipped from overseas. Actually manufacture. Thales, NIOA, and a cluster of specialist firms are investing in production lines for rockets, artillery ammunition, and complex missile systems. In a high-intensity conflict, precision weapons burn faster than peacetime planners want to admit. A nation that can only restock through overseas supply chains is a nation that runs dry at the worst possible time. Shipbuilding at Osborne in South Australia and Henderson in Western Australia is expanding. The defense electronics sector is designing world-class radar and electronic warfare systems. Decoys, the elegant, undersung technology that seduces incoming missiles away from ships by mimicking their electronic signature, are an Australian specialty. Nobody talks about them. They save ships. This is the quiet infrastructure of power, not headline grabbing, but the difference between a military that can fight for a week and one that can fight for a year. Any analysis that skips this section is selling you something. The AUKUS submarine timeline is ambitious, very ambitious. Building a domestic nuclear submarine industry from near zero, the shipyards, the nuclear qualified tradespeople, the maintenance culture, the regulatory framework is a generational undertaking. It will test political will across multiple governments and multiple budget cycles. The gap between announcement and actual capability is wide, and the Valley has historically swallowed defense programs that were well funded and earnestly intended. Munitions stocks are improving, but remain a genuine concern. Serious estimates of what Australia holds in hardened bunkers against what a sustained high-intensity conflict would demand suggest the gap is real. The GWEO enterprise is the correct response. It is not yet the completed response. Personnel is the perennial challenge. The ADF competes for talent in an economy that pays well for the same skills it needs. A radar technician, a nuclear engineer, an F-35 maintenance specialist. These people can make excellent money in the civilian economy. Retention in critical technical trades is a problem every advanced military faces, and Australia is no exception. Faster promotion pathways, better housing, and improved pay are helping. They are not enough yet. And the tyranny of distance is real. Australia's geography is simultaneously its greatest strategic asset and its most punishing logistical constraint. Sustaining high-intensity operations thousands of kilometers from home requires fuel, ordnance, and spare parts to travel vast distances. That has costs in time, in money, and in operational tempo. These are not reasons to dismiss the ADF. They are reasons to take its transformation seriously, rather than treat it as finished. It is not finished, but the direction is real and the momentum is genuine. Let's make all of this concrete. It is 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, somewhere in the Timor Sea. A regional power has declared a blockade over a contested island chain. 2 cargo vessels have turned back. Diplomatic channels are not answering. The window for ambiguity is closing. An E-7A Wedgetail lifts from RAAF Tyndall into the dark, climbing fast, its radar already building a picture 200 kilometers in every direction. Below it, a Hobart-class destroyer is at sea, Aegis active, pulling tracks from the Wedgetail, from satellites, from sensors it won't specify. Somewhere north, quiet as a thought, a Collins-class submarine has repositioned. No announcement, no transponder. A HIMARS battery that was in a hardened shelter 4 hours ago is now under a tarp somewhere in the Northern Territory. Grid coordinates already loaded. F-35s are airborne in pairs. Sensors passive, watching. The Growlers are 30 kilometers back, waiting for a reason to exist. A company of infantry is on a landing craft that left Darwin before sunrise, heading toward a coastline with no name on most maps. The opposing commander looks at his radar. He sees a Wedgetail. He wonders about the contacts he cannot quite classify. His sonar operators report something they cannot confirm. He knows there is a HIMARS battery somewhere, and he knows he cannot find it. He knows the F-35s are up there, watching him watch them. He does not give the order to advance. That is not a failure. That is the entire point. Deterrence is not winning a war. It is making a war not start. It is the most cost-effective use of military power ever devised, and every dollar spent on range, precision, and ambiguity, on submarines nobody can find, and missiles nobody can intercept, is a dollar spent making a Tuesday in the Timor Sea end without anyone having to fire. So, how insanely powerful is Australia's military in 2026? At sea, 3 Aegis destroyers armed with cruise missiles, growing Hunter frigates, Collins-class submarines still in the fight, AUKUS nuclear boats building toward arrival, and a fleet of autonomous systems that never sleeps. In the air, 72 F-35s, networked with Growlers, Wedgetails, Poseidons, Tritons, and tankers, into a system that sees first, jams first, and strikes from distances adversaries find uncomfortable. On land, an army reoriented toward the north, equipped with precision rocket artillery, modern fighting vehicles, and a doctrine of dispersion that turns familiar terrain into a 3-dimensional problem for anyone considering an advance. In the invisible domains, a cyber capability growing faster than headlines suggest, a space architecture that underpins everything else, and an autonomous revolution in the early stages of changing what combat mass actually means. Underpinning all of it, the most expansive alliance network in Australian history, a domestic defense industry finally building the industrial muscle to sustain conflict, and a government that has, for the first time in a generation, committed to long-term investment as a strategic necessity rather than a political gesture. There are gaps to close. There are timelines that will stretch. There are munitions stockpiles that need to grow, and engineers who need to be trained, and ships that need to be built. None of that makes the trajectory less real. All of it makes it more important to continue. The Porcupine with a jet engine is real. The quills reach further than the map suggests. The nose is pointed in the right direction. How insanely powerful is Australia's military in 2026? Powerful enough that the right adversary, sitting in the right command room, looking at the right radar picture, will quietly decide today is not the day. That is what military power actually looks like when it works. Not a promise to win every war. A credible, unmistakable signal that starting one with Australia is a decision with consequences no rational calculator wants to absorb. After everything we have covered today, the submarines, the missiles, the autonomous systems, the alliances, the northern bases, and the industrial spine being built quietly in the desert, the question for the next decade is not whether Australia can fight. It is whether anyone will decide they want to find out. The smart money says they won't.